What's going on, everyone? This is George here from Lucia. Please welcome Jeremy Levine here with me. He's the Director of International Business Development from WalkMe, a longtime sales and business development and marketing leader in the tech space. And Jeremy, welcome to Lucia's podcast. How's it going
Thank you,
today?
George. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
My
How's it
pleasure.
going?
It's well. It's going well. How about yourself?
Doing all right. Doing all right. Trying to close out the year, I guess,
Yeah, same here. Same here. So thanks for giving us the time here and joining our podcast. I wanted to talk to you about, I think for you, sales and business development, it's a thing of passion for you. You thoroughly enjoy, bringing on new folks, getting them into SaaS and helping them change their lives. So I'd love with you to share with us, tell us about yourself and your journey. And what
So
brought
it's funny, George. You said I've got this huge experience in the software space for sales and marketing, and that's not true. I do have huge experience, or a lot of experience in sales and marketing, but in a huge variety of different industries. And the reason for that is that I studied art in university, and when you have a degree in art, well, you got to find things to do to make money. And sales was always something that I did well and I enjoyed. But what you were talking about is, it's funny. I had an interview today. I was interviewing a prospect for one of the roles I have in the UK. And, one of the things we talked about is drivers, what drives you, right? And for me, it's very easy in sales when you talk about drivers. Salespeople, they tend to be motivated by money, right? I want to make as much money as I possibly can. And that's definitely a good driver for a salesperson. When I'm looking at a business development rep, I kind of want a little bit more because it tends to be that those that are strictly driven by money tend to be a little bit more difficult to manage, right? Because you can't, they're much harder to get through the hard months. And they're very impatient when it comes to that next step in their career. They want to make more money and more money and more money. And in order to do that, they've got to be an account executive, within a year. And it's part of my plan to make, $1 million by the time I'm 30 years old. And I can appreciate, the plan and stuff like that, but that's what's driving them. It makes it a little challenging, right? For me personally to manage somebody like that, because I look for more. And again, it goes back to my roots, which were, a non-traditional path to get to where I'm at today, right? I've worked in multiple industries. I've sold everything from cars to wine. I worked in the restaurant industry for many years, and I spent a lot of time in call centers when I moved out here to Israel, as an English speaker, and in order to elevate my life or to bring my career to the next stage, I needed somebody to give me an opportunity to build a career in the high-tech space, right? Especially with a non-traditional background. So when I entered the space, I entered as a entry-level outbound SDR. And I'm so happy I was outbound. I can't even explain to you, because I do love the role. I love the outbound motion. I love the business development field. And as we developed from outbound SDR into a business development roles, I was there for that entire journey to watch the team being built, and then to eventually where I took over. So today, when we talk about drivers, and when I interview, some people are career driven, family driven. Those are drivers I love, because those are easy to work with, and to manage. Me personally, I'm impact driven. Right? Family driven for sure, right? That's always my number one. My family drives me to excel. But the other thing that drives me is the ability to impact people's lives. And this is one of the reasons I love the product that I represent, WalkMe, because it can easily impact people's lives, whether it's the user providing a more enjoyable user experience, or the professional in building a career that's based around our technology, which is now huge. And that's such an amazing thing to see. And the people that champion it, they win huge awards. So we just won our 4th year in a row for Supernova Employee Experience Future of Work category. Yeah, I didn't win it. It was the champion of WalkMe in Nestle that won the award for deploying our technology.
Wow.
right? So those kinds of things, like that kind of impact is amazing. And so how do I drive impact in my field, in my team? And you're right. I hire people that are not your atypical BDRs, right? I'll take people and give them a new opportunity at a career in the SaaS space. I think one of my biggest success stories to date right now is Ariella. She's a mother of 7. She spent 15 years in nonprofits. I brought her over, and we gave her an opportunity, and now she was last month she was at 210% of her target, or 220% of her target. It was incredible, right? And she loves it. She loves it, right? So that's kind of what my kick is now, is like, how can I impact people in the best way possible?
That's great. Thanks for sharing that with me. Yeah, and I did kind of I did see the marketing experience, and now the art. How did I think? Do you think that art had some kind of positive impact on where you are today and how it helped you shape to the role?
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, where I am. Art's been a major part of my journey. We'll just put it that way, right? Art brought me to Israel in my 20s. Art, gave me an outlet to express myself, which I was always lacking. Especially when I got older. As in my youth, I used to do a lot of theater, performance. But as I got older and that wasn't a component of my life anymore, art gave me that creative outlet. It also gives me, creative conceptual thinking, right? That's, that can always help, right? Thinking outside the box, looking at things from different angles. And because I don't have that traditional, box of that line, it comes from prospecting. You work in business development, you look at people's profiles day in, day out, and we're always hunting down the very best people in the top companies in the world. And you look at their profiles and you read how they got to where they're at. And it's very, a lot of times, especially in those larger roles, it's a very straight line, right? A CRO of a company started as a business development rep, went to an account executive, became a director, then a VP sales. And then, it's the entire career path is laid out perfectly, brick by brick by brick by brick, right? Same thing with, just about any leader. You've got that very specific path. Well, when you're in that kind of path, there's not, you're walking down a path with, walls down the side. Right. You don't, you're not see a lot. Right. So I think that, that's one of the benefits of my background is I've just seen so many different paths and are able to take what I've learned and what I've seen and incorporate it in new ways, looking at how we go to market, looking how we build pipeline, looking how we onboard, and how we hire.
That's awesome. So how do you onboard? Like, is it non-traditional, or is it like more, would you say?
I've just gone through, I'm finishing up my 3rd boot camp with hires. I've just hired onboarded 7 people over 3 months. So we did 3-1-1-1 boot camp. The first one had 3 BDRs, the second one 2, this one has 2. I came up with a system. We had a gap in enablement. So I had to do a lot of the work myself. And the system I designed, I used a little bit of something I learned from, I think his name is Dan over at Winning by Design. He's their chief learning officer. He came up with a system called Rex, right? And I use this as the base of my onboarding. Rex stands for results, efforts, knowledge, skills, right? Results being the goals, company and personal, long-term, short-term. Efforts are activities, and with the BDRs, that's an activity-driven role. So activities are a key component to being a successful BDR. K being knowledge, we are WalkMe. WalkMe has a massive value proposition to like unlimited buying centers within an organization, right? So you've got to know like what WalkMe means to sales, to HR, to ITSM, to call centers, to external digital, portals, mobile. So there's a lot of knowledge required to be a WalkMe BDR. And then the skills is the application of knowledge to your efforts. So the cool thing about the system is that, if you're having a problem hitting your results, you can examine the efforts and the knowledge to see where the gap is and where the employee is being challenged, and then fill in the blanks. If it's a problem with the skills overall, as I always say, it's a different conversation. But what I did was I was onboarding a school teacher, right? So I had a woman that was joining the team. She was a math teacher in the UK. She immigrated here. And I was like, okay, I'm about to onboard a teacher. I've got to put together like a hell of a program, right? How do you teach a teacher? And it's such a great starting point, right? Because it was such a good challenge of like, how do you teach a teacher? I need to like add structure. I got to have some sort of like, and that's when I took the Rex and kind of applied it to onboarding. So I created a spreadsheet. Under efforts, I put all the different activities you need to know and the tools and what account development is versus account ownership, prospecting and LinkedIn and under knowledge, I put all the different, knowledge use cases and WalkMe, internal ROE, everything like that. I kind of put check boxes, let's check off the list as we go along. And that's where I started it. Nice. Now, I've needed help since then, as we've scaled and gotten bigger and as my time has become more limited. So I took one of my senior BDRs, her name is Sarah. She runs my French desk, and started working with her, and she kind of started adding more structure to my onboarding plan, right? So now we've got courses, and I think it's also really important when you're onboarding new employees that you include the entire team. Right? There's two things you want to achieve in the onboarding. It's first and foremost, you need to make sure that they've got the knowledge to do the job and be successful. They have to be set up for success, right? The other thing you want to do is to drive team culture through onboarding, right? I talk to certain leaders out there and they have gaps in culture, right? They're trying to generate culture after they've already built the team. That's a very challenging thing to do. But if you generate culture from the minute that the person joins the team, well, then you'll never have a culture issue after, in the end. So part of generating that culture is that every single member of the team is involved in the onboarding of new employees. Right. So there's certain people that are more specific, you'll go to talk to this BDR because she's incredible with LinkedIn. You'll speak to our outreach champion, and she'll teach about outreach. You'll talk to Daniel, one of my manager, he will teach Salesforce. I'll do some of the knowledge components. I like to talk about the value proposition and the use cases and account development and research. Those are things that I like to, go into and fill in the blanks. And then Sarah came up with the best idea. She was running nightly sessions. So originally when it was just one person at a time, I'd say, okay, make sure that you schedule with each and every BDR because you have something, even the newest ones, you can learn something from.
Absolutely, yeah.
But what Sarah did in order to, make it more efficient and save time, she started doing these afternoon sessions she scheduled in. So 5:30, meet the team. Everyone is hosted by a different BDR. That's not part of the onboarding, curriculum.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, then they sit with a BDR at the end of the day. That way, instead of having multiple meetings, they've got one, it's pre-scheduled. Yeah. And, so one day they'll sit with one BDR, and another day they'll sit with another BDR. And that way they get to know the whole team throughout that. And again, we're generating culture. So those are, it's been fun. I love this little, building out the team and scaling and onboarding.
That sounds great. I was taking notes on Rex because I'm in a similar boat, right? Like we have a structure, but it can be a lot better, right? And you said something interesting. I did hire someone from higher education recently, and that's when I kind of like said, all right, I have to put together something that's kind of has a lot more structure to it. And I'm at a point now where as more BDRs and SDRs are getting experience, I could dish off persona training, hierarchy training, how to break down an account and research it training to other reps, so I don't have to do all of that kind of stuff. So it is nice to do that.
And again, it's good for generating culture, right?
Definitely.
It's
Yeah.
and they'll teach things that you would never teach, right? I've been out of the field too long at this point in time. It's been 2 years that I've been in leadership, and that's a great distance from being on the phones every day. I think one of the benefits is that I did sit in that chair for 2.5 years. I worked for a very long time as a BDR for WalkMe before I went to management. But the guys that are out there now picking up the phones every day and sending the emails and prospecting, they're going to teach things that I just don't know anymore.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point.
Yeah.
What's the feedback been like for the boot camp in terms of
Well, you can look at feedback in one of two ways. First and foremost, you can hear the success from the people. We have been running surveys, and the response has been great. And I think they really appreciate the exposure to the team and the different people. That's something that I get a lot of good feedback on. And the other thing is the numbers, right? So now that we're running this boot camp, the first team that went through it, within their first month of having a number over their head, it was still a ramping number. 2 of them hit 167%, and one of them hit 100%. So that was on their ramp. Pride, lots of it. So I think that the program speaks for itself once you see the numbers. But also, thanks, man. It was a very good one.
That's awesome. That's great. That's a win.
It is. It is. It was a very good win. Now we've got the second set on their first month of ramp. I just want them to hit 100%. That's all I want to see, right? Okay. Just get me those 3 opportunities each, and we'll focus on really crushing your numbers. Next month, December is a tough month, anyways.
Right.
So yeah, we're doing all right. We'll see. That was the first one. We'll see what the second one's doing, and we've got another. The next set goes on to their ramp target next month, and we'll see how they do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's very insightful and helpful. I can definitely take a lot of that and apply it to what we have doing, what's going on today. I'm curious to know, like, when do you know that someone's ready to move on and kind of get promoted and go on to the next phase of where they want to go?
So first and foremost, I set the expectation right away. Okay, 2 things. The first is that I look for a 1.5 to 2 year commitment. I'm not looking for BDRs. I make it very clear from the very first interview, right? I'm not looking for people to transition out of the job in a year, right? Now, the American orgs are built a little bit differently, and also has to do with the way that I hire, right? The American orgs are built more as like talent generating machines, which is cool. But one of the problems you have is if you don't have open seats for that talent to move somewhere, you'll lose them very quickly. And if you start with saying the expectations, we've got people that will make AE in a year. Well, AE in a year, from the beginning, it's locked in their heads. They're expecting to get there, especially the top performers. And if you don't have the seats, they're going to leave,
right?
Because they didn't get their AE in a year. But if you start out saying, look, I'm looking for a 1.5 to 2 year commitment, right? Starting there, and then you say, look, the most important thing to me personally as a leader is getting you started into a career track. Okay, whether it's into sales or customer success or services or any other solution engineer or even marketing. There's a lot of different paths you can go. There's roles, maybe sales doesn't fit you and you're like, I want to try marketing. No problem. We're going to help you and get you to that next point. But I can't promise you that will happen. The only thing I can promise you is that we're always focused on this, and we will work hard to provide those career tracks for you. But part of it you have to earn on your own, right? And more importantly, we have to make sure the seats are open. Yeah. So it's, I say the shelf life, it's somewhere between 1.5 to 2 years to where the job gets to the point where it's automatic. Right? Where it doesn't take a lot of thought anymore. And prospecting is like you can do in your sleep, and cleaning leads, and and that's one of the reasons also that I push the phone so hard. I was like, look, there's in the long term, after a year, like the BDR role can become incredibly monotonous, right? You're prospecting, you're cleaning leads, you're building leads, you're setting them into sequences, you're over and over and over again. And the 2 things that can break the monotony, first and foremost, is research, right? How deep do you want to go into your accounts? We do account-based sales, right? And because it's WalkMe, we've got tons of buying centers to sell to, so you can go very deep into an account. The second thing is pick up the phone and dial, right? Because that, you never know what you're going to get. And to me, that's all the fun of the role, right? I can dial 100 dials a day like that, no problem, just because I love dialing the phone.
Right.
Phone
never felt heavy for me.
No.
No, not at all. And you mentioned car sales earlier, and I've worked in car sales as well. I think it builds different character too. So you have something different.
It was a long time ago, car sales. It did not last very long, and I was very young. But I learned what, in car sales, I learned what a young person can do to a whole bunch of old people that are out there selling, right? It's such a threat. It's, and they're sharks, all of them. Car salespeople they can be vicious. Not a business I would go back into. It was a very short amount of time, but it was interesting. It was educational.
It builds character, I think.
That's for sure.
Yeah. Back to dials though. I mean, I think for me, at least, I think dials are one of the most successful ways for me, at least for when I was a BDR to book meetings. And for my team, it's different. It could be for some folks, their emailing just on point, but their personalization is 100%. Some folks, LinkedIn messaging is really good because they can get really personalized and targeted. And some people way better on the phones. Do you feel like?
Yes, I agree. And that's always going to be an issue, or not an issue. It's always, there's a dynamic there, but the key to the messaging around that is you're absolutely right. If you're better at emails, I understand. If you're better at the phone, I get it. If LinkedIn is your game, but combine them all together.
Right.
And you're going to do more.
Yeah,
you're going to get more results. You're going to get more money. It's really simple. Right. And that's the thrill of this role, is because it's activity driven. The more activities you do, the more success you'll have, period. It's the only role in the sales org where you can say that's true.
You get what you put in, basically.
100%. You have to own your success in this role, 100%. But as long as you have that multi-touch dimension. I mean, you can dial the phones 100 dials in a day and nobody's going to answer, but it will increase your chances of engaging, because it's those touch points. Right? You put somebody in the center and you touch them here and you touch them there and you touch them there. Eventually, you're going to annoy the hell out of them and they'll answer you. Right. And that's okay. That's okay. Annoy the hell out of them. Right. And when they're yelling at the AE about how unprofessional you are, that's still a win because they were on the call.
Right. Yeah. You got the meeting.
Be the bad guy. Be the bad guy. I instruct my people to be the bad guys. Right. We can let the AE swing in there and be the superhero.
Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, do you have like set requirements for KPIs? You mentioned, this is a effort-driven role where your KPIs define your role. I know a lot of companies do it different, but do you require certain numbers, KPIs to be met per day? Calls, emails?
Of course. Aaron Zukowski, who's the global leader, who I report to, he calls it the hustle metrics. And I like that. I like that a lot. That's your activities, your daily activities, 50, 50, 50, right? 50 emails, 50 dials, 50 prospects daily. The thing you don't have to worry about is the emails, because once you have enough people in sequences, the emails will handle themselves. What really matters is those 50 dials and those 50 prospects at a minimum, right? I think COVID, it's interesting because COVID impacted the phone significantly, especially in EMEA and APAC, where data is sparse and we don't have a lot of mobile numbers. So, everybody, and when they shut down all the call centers and they shut down all the switchboards and everybody was working from home, we had no way to reach out to people anymore. So you'll always see the newest BDRs are dialing the most. The ones that have been through this over the last couple of years are the ones that are dialing the least, right? And it's been a very big push of myself and Daniel, who leads one of my pods, to really recreate that dial culture. Again, you have to start culture from the very beginning, but if you've got a core group of people that are not used to dialing the phone, to recreate it from nothing is really hard to do. If you do it from the beginning, so my newer people dialing the phone like crazy. My older people are the ones that are still having a hard time picking it up. And it was bound to happen, right?
Yeah.
As long as the new guard coming in, and we've got that calling culture that's going on, we should be fine moving forward.
Yeah. And in terms of like cadences and sequences, how do you feel about like automated messaging and emails that, adding a touch of personalization?
So, okay, so I'll give you some of my secrets here. I think they're both necessary. This is what I call the difference between strategic and tactical outbounding. Okay, so strategic being that full customization, right? Understanding the account, diving really deep into it, like going into their annual reports, figuring out what the strategic drivers of the company are, customizing the messaging according to their needs as a company can actually increase efficiency, but it still requires deep dive.
Right.
Obviously customization to the persona is the easiest thing, but it takes the most time. Either way, 80% of one of my BDR's work should be focused on the strategic, right? 20% though should be tactical. And tactical approach is, instead of prospecting into one company, why don't you take all those like tier 2 and tier 3 companies that are not priorities, bunch them all together into, let's say take a dozen of them, work 2 half days a week, so 20% of your week, and prospect buying center at a time. So instead of like going after multiple buying centers in one org, you're taking 12 orgs and going after one buying center. You're able to clean those leads much faster, target the right people, okay? And then you push them into what we call tactical sequences. And this is fully automated, no phone calls, okay? That sequences the last 2 months. And they'll automatically generate a urgent phone call if an email is opened up more than twice, right? So we get the calls going in that way. Email opens, you'll get a call, right? So you'll get those tasks, you'll get those, and that way we can get a much wider spray.
Right. Yeah.
Right. In the past, we always talked about, the persona of the BDR, one being like you've got a sniper versus a machine gunner, right? The sniper being the strategic, the machine gunner being the tactical, spray and pray. I was always more of a machine gunner than a sniper. The problem with being a sniper is you can never spray enough, right? And the problem with being a machine gunner is that the lack of quality. So if we can find a balance between the two, right, and still bring in those new logos and those greenfield accounts and focus on the expansion of the key client accounts with more customization, at least we'll be able to buffer the pipe, with some high quality stuff, both cross sell and net new.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, that's a secret.
Yeah, that's a secret. Took that down as a note. I think this has been very helpful, Jeremy. Thanks for sharing these tips with us. Before we wrap this up, what are 3 things that you'd give as an advice or a tip for people that want to get into business development or sales development?
First off, you got to make yourself noticeable. Okay. And there's a lot of different ways to do that, because right now, I guess it really depends on where you're sitting in the world, right? It's really interesting because right now we're in this great resignation period. It's really a job seeker's market, but at the same time, we get inundated with CVs when we open up a role in different regions. Some regions I'm having a much harder time. I am hiring in Sydney and the UK right now. I need a Spanish speaker in the UK. Please, come to my profile. You can find links on LinkedIn. But beyond that, I think that and those regions have been a little more challenging. But you need to make yourself noticeable. So you can do that a couple different ways. First off, write an interesting cover letter. Make your CV or your resume very interesting. Okay, so that it jumps out, right? We look at CVs all day, and honestly, I don't even look at CVs as much as I look at LinkedIn profiles, because LinkedIn is so essential to our work. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, I'm going to pass you over, flat out. I don't care what your background is. If you're not on LinkedIn, it's a problem, because it's so required as a tool for the role. So then again, also buffer your LinkedIn, profile, make it interesting, right? I make it, again, make sure that you're noticeable. And try, if you can, if you understand how to prospect, figure out who the hiring manager is
Mm-hmm.
and message them.
Right. Yeah, that works. It works with me.
Yeah. The people that I gave roles to that were like some of the more impressive, it's those that come in incredibly well prepared, those that do, a little bit of pushback or question, any decision. If you get rejected, ask why.
Right.
Right. Who knows, that could open up a door to actually getting the role. That's literally how I got my role at WalkMe. So it's, you just have to make yourself stand out in a flood of, applicants and people starting, new careers. And you have to find people that are open to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key, right? There's still that stigma in the US that the BDR role is an entry-level role. I don't believe that. I think that we can do more than that. I think that it's a very valuable part of the account team. There's still a belief that, that the life of a BDR is less than a year. Again, I really don't believe that. And I think we're making a huge mistake by even encouraging that, because you spend about 3 months getting a BDR fully ramped up. And then, really only have 9 months of performance before they want to move on. Set the standard from the very beginning. And expect, I think a lot of people that are trying to shift their careers, I just got to try, right? But put a story there, make it, the best people, salespeople are always storytellers, right? If you can start with a story of some sort, it's a good starting point. You got to get the hiring manager's attention any way you can.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same thing as a BDR. You got to get your prospects' attention any way you can. So those are qualities as hiring managers that we should be looking for and nurturing and being like, yes, please come work on my team.
I agree with you. Thanks so much for sharing this. This has been a pleasure, Jeremy.
Thanks, George.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Happy to join Lucia in this really great call.